Listeners, I want to tell you a little story as we begin this episode. So, it's 2005. I'm working on a novel and working largely alone because the internet isn't what the internet is today. And I email a professor to see if he has anything I can do to improve my work. Well, he tells me about this writing group that I can become a part of, and it feels like destiny. I have asked for something and I have received exactly what I have asked for. And I'm so excited. So I connect with the leader of this group. He tells me I can join the group, but I have to be workshopped on the first day. And I have this minor misgiving, but I think that this is destiny and my intuition is leading me in the right direction. Listeners, have you ever had this kind of experience where it feels like destiny, but something is a little off? Well, I joined this group. It goes okay for a little while. I share that I'm working on a novel, and the leader says, I'm working on a novel too. Let's workshop your novel first. And again, I had that little twinge, but I thought, oh my gosh, I've been waiting for feedback on my novel. And this is once again intuition leading me in the right direction. So I say yes. And it goes incredibly poorly. My book gets completely messed up, and I have to shelve this project. And I probably should have shelved this project anyway, but what is the point of this story? I had fallen into a people pleasing trap. And that people pleasing trap had taken me farther away from my goal. And so that is why in today's episode, I am going to tease out the difference between people pleasing and actually following your gut so that you can spend more time being yourself and being authentically who you are rather than chasing things that do not serve you. And as I do this, I'm going to share the Achilles heel question that writers are often asked, and it is the one that gets them into the most trouble and has them signing up for things that maybe are not really right for them. So you'll want to stay tuned for that, but let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to Writing Resilience, the podcast for writers who want to write and live the story that sets them free. I'm your host, Lisa Cooper Ellison, a writer, transformational and trauma-informed coach, story alchemist, and fellow traveler on the winding road of healing and creativity. Each week, I'll share tools, practices, and conversations that will help you let go of what no longer serves you as you create stories that change lives, especially your own. Together, we'll explore how to trust your creative voice, support your mental health and resilience, work with your nervous system and unique design, and stay connected to your deepest calling as a writer, even when life gets messy. It's time, my friends, to write and live the story that sets you free. I'm honored to walk that journey alongside you, one story and one episode at a time. Listeners, I have one thing to share before we get started with today's show. One of the most common things I hear from beginning and intermediate writers alike is this: I don't know what this scene is about. They know what happened in their life and they can describe it with aching beauty, but when asked the scene's point in their book, they shrug. I've seen so many memoirists wrestle with this issue, and here's the good news: it is completely fixable. I'll show you how during Building Better Memoir Scenes. This 90-minute webinar in collaboration with Jane Friedman is just $25 until June 20th, and the recording is yours to keep. Grab the link in the show notes. I'd love to see you on June 24th. Welcome, everyone, to Writing Your Resilience. I am Lisa Cooper Ellison, your resident story alchemist and the host of this show. And I am so excited to be here with you today as we talk about an issue that is very important to me because I spent so much time in my earlier life with people pleasing and being a people pleaser. And it's something I can still fall back into because it's pretty ingrained. But I've had to learn how to know the difference between when something is people pleasing and when it's my gut, and how to do this in a way that helps me own my decisions and live from a place of power. And that is what I want to do for you. So, to begin, let's talk about what people pleasing is. So, people pleasing is when you choose other people's expectations, desires, or wants over your desires, and especially over what you know is right for you. It's a big problem because when you are people pleasing, you are abandoning yourself and you're abandoning your needs. Now, does that mean that you never have to do things that you don't want to do? No, not at all. But the difference is, can you do it in a way that still honors your needs? That's the difference. When you are people pleasing, you're not honoring your own needs. And sometimes we people please in a very conscious way. Someone asks us to do something or they suggest that we do something, and we begin that pro con list. All of this decision making from the neck up. We think, okay, what are the benefits of doing this? What are the cons of doing this, or what may go wrong? What do they expect from me? What are the stories that the world has told me in terms of what I need to be doing? We might also think about the fact that, I've always done this, therefore I should continue to do it. And here's a great example. Let's say you are the person who brings the broccoli rice casserole to every single family reunion, and everybody loves this casserole. Well, you get to a place in your life where you're sick and tired of it. You don't want to make broccoli rice casserole ever again. Or maybe you can't eat cheese anymore. And so you don't want to make it. But you begin to think about, oh, but everybody wants it. They are expecting it. Maybe I'll just eat it anyway. And I don't know, I'll take some lactate tabs and hope for the best. But you're doing that for everyone else while negating your own needs. And you're doing it consciously. You know that you're thinking about these things. You know that this is in your field when you're making the decision, and you're making a decision based on everyone else's expectations. So there's a lot of self-talk involved, right? That's what I mean by conscious. You're talking to yourself about what the right decision is. And that's important because sometimes what we think of as people pleasing, and if you're not watching this on YouTube, I'm using air quotes right now, is actually something unconscious, and that is the fawning trauma response, right? And so in the fawning trauma response, what happens is you're asked a question or someone wants you to do something, and you immediately say yes or no, even before you've had a chance to think about it. So in the fawning trauma response, which is actually a trauma response, there is no conscious thought, there is no self-talk involved, other than what in the world did I just agree to, which happens after the fact, right? The decision making is instantaneous. And that's because the fawning trauma response is a mixture of a freeze and a flight response, where you self abandon before you've even had a chance to think about whether or not this is something you actually want to do. And I have a great episode with Ingrid Clayton on the fawning trauma response. She also has an incredible book, Fawning, that you can buy. And so I will link to both in the show notes so that you can learn more about the fawning trauma response. And what I want to say right now is that if you have felt like that is something that you go into, or you found yourself fawning and then you beat yourself up for it because you're like, why do I keep falling into the same pattern, doing the same things? Well, it's unconscious, right? And at one point in your life, that was a powerful mechanism to keep you safe. It was a genius strategy that allowed you to survive in an environment where you are with volatile caregivers or people who are really inconsistent. And your survival probably depended on you being able to self abandon. The difference is that now that same strategy isn't serving you in the same way. So what you can do with the fawning trauma response is just begin to notice when this is happening and love yourself radically as you begin to unpack it so that you can make more conscious decisions. And the first conscious decision I want you to know that you can make is to change your mind. If you found that you have fallen into that and you've chosen something that really is abandoning you, you can make a change and you can say, I thought this was going to be a good idea, but I've realized what I actually need to do is this. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to tell you before. Or you can just say, this is just what I need to do. Because I was almost even going into the fawning trauma response, which is to over explain why you have to say no, and you don't actually have to do it. But you do want to begin to understand why you might be doing this. So often, what causes both the fawning trauma response and conscious people pleasing is the stories that we have been told about how we should behave, how we should operate, and who we should be. And in the case of the fawning trauma response, those responses are survival related. So if I don't give everyone else what I need, I will die or I will be abandoned, right? So there'll be usually some sort of abandonment related issue when it comes to the fawning trauma response. When it comes to more conscious people pleasing, it's usually that we're falling into the stories that the world has told us about who we should be, or perhaps parents or caregivers or someone else. But what happens is that we fall into these expectations. And so here are some of the stories that we may find ourselves in. And so it could be that we're falling into the expectation of, I've always done the certain thing that people like and I have to keep doing it. Or people who are hard workers are seen as good. So I have to keep working hard, even though I'm feeling exhausted. Or it could be any number of the other stories that we are told. And here's one that I was just talking about earlier today, which is the fact that the algorithms tell us we have to be online all the time. And if we're not, number one, they're going to suppress our content. And two, we're going to disappoint the people who are waiting for it. Right. So, listeners, if you have another story that you have been told or the world is telling you about how to operate, please add that to the YouTube comments because I would love to have a great conversation about it because it's a huge problem and it's the reason we fall into these things. And we think that if we are doing what other people want, we're going to be safe, we're going to be loved, we're going to be accepted. And sometimes, like in the case of that writing group, it can feel so enticing and it can be so much what we think that we want or need that it can feel like our intuition is taking us in the right direction when that may not be the case. And this can show up in your writing and specifically on the page when you are trying to please the people who have given you feedback on your work, whether that is members of your writing group or an editor. So here's what that looks like. You've been writing, you have a piece, it's kind of messy or not quite there. So you give it to your writing group or to an editor to get some feedback. You get feedback, and some of that feedback goes against your gut, but you start to say, well, that person knows more, or if they said it, probably is a problem. And so then you change your work based on what they've said without thinking about how that may affect the vision you have for your project. And, that's actually what ended up happening in that novel. Now, granted, it was the first time I'd even written a novel. I didn't really know what I was doing. It was a practice book and it didn't need to be published. So my heart is not broken about it now. I know that that was okay. But the lesson I learned is that, we were workshopping this one chapter at a time. So people would have all these questions. They would want me to change things in certain ways. So then I would change it to please everything that they said. But if they'd known this thing that happens 40 pages later, it would have answered the question. I wouldn't have had to done this thing. And it completely discombobulated the project. Well, what discombobulated the project? My desire to please the people who were giving me feedback, because I wanted to be seen as good. I wanted to be seen as someone who has a thick skin, who is able to take in feedback and do something with it. Listeners, sounding familiar? Any of you face that? Oh, yeah. It's a common thing. And so that's why I always say to people, you are the God of your story. And it's really important for you to own that. Because when you don't, your projects can get all messed up. If this is happening in relationship with other people, you can start to feel resentful, and that resentment can lead to fractures in your relationships with other people. And even when it doesn't, it can lead to a shame spiral, because you're not doing what you want to do, and you know you're not doing it, and you know you're self abandoning, but you can't stop from self abandoning. And so you can get caught in this really negative storm that makes you feel really bad about who you are. And so there are a lot of things that can happen that are negative. And if you're constantly in those states of frustration, resentment, or that shame storm, it can have a negative impact on your health. And that is huge. And so you want to really work with this so that you can be in your power, right? Because when you're in all of those other states, you are not in your power. And that's part of the reason why it can affect your health, because you're in a state of stress. So that's a little about what it is and how it can affect you. But let's talk about what you need to do to be able to stop doing it. One of the things that you can do is get clear about what you want. And I know if you're a person who's experienced the fawning trauma response, that can be really challenging. I get it. You may have been asked, what do you want for dinner? And you don't even know which restaurant you want. You don't even know what food is because your mind goes blank. So, what I want you to start with is what you are passionate about. What are your passions? Because those are usually pretty ingrained. And even if you don't allow yourself to connect with them or to work on them, you know what they are, right? And so, what are your dreams and what are your passions? And a question that I frequently ask people is, what would you do if no one paid you and you are not recognized for what you did? Okay, that can be a question that can help you get to what your vocation is and what your passions are. So, for instance, I am a person who loves to write. And you know what? That situation with that writing group a long time ago, it really sucked. And it did make me feel like I didn't want to write for a period of time. But because writing is my passion, it is something that is so important and so ingrained, I came back to it. Okay, so that's one of the ways that you will know if something is a passion. Teaching is another passion of mine. I love to do it. And at one point, I was an elementary school teacher. And now, even today, I do something completely different in terms of my job, but I still teach because it's a passion. And I find myself teaching, yes, professionally, but I also teach one on one or just in anything that I do, and I love it. So that's something you want to think about. What are those things that you would do no matter what? Because if you would do it no matter what, that's a passion. And the first thing you can do to get yourself out of people pleasing is begin to say, how can I make room for my passions? Even if it's just a little. Can I say no to something for 5 minutes? Can I not self abandon for 5 minutes so that I can do the one thing that matters to me? And so that little exercise can be one way that you can give yourself space to work on things. And so that is going to lead to my Achilles heel question, which I promised I would share. And this one is going to feel like tough medicine for some of you because you may think you're the only one. So, What is the question? I cannot tell you the number of times someone has told me they've been at a dinner party, they've shared some incredibly harrowing, interesting, powerful part of their life, and everyone has been captivated, and someone has said, you should write a book about that. And then they feel like, oh my God, people say I should write a book about it. They love what I've done. I should write a book about it. And they come wanting to write this book, not knowing what it takes to write a book in terms of how much time, how much effort, all the things they'll need to learn. And often they have the expectation that not only are they going to write a book, but they're going to write a bestseller. So, what this is the equivalent of is being a person who's a couch potato, does not do any kind of running, to say, I'm going to now run a marathon and help me do that in 2 weeks. That's often what's being suggested, and people don't realize it. And so I'm not suggesting that you don't have an interesting life and that you shouldn't write a book about it, because you very well might need to. But here's what I really want you to think about is that your passion? Is that the thing that you really want to do, that you would do even if it's never published and no one reads it? Because if that's not the case, I really want you to question not whether you write, but whether you want to write a book. Or could you use writing in a different way? Could you write an essay? Could you write a short story? Could you write something else before committing to a book? And that, again, it's not about whether or not you should do it. It's about, are you doing that to please a group of people who've told you this is a good idea, right? They said you should write a book, right? That should word is there. Or is this something that is truly, authentically what you want to do? And listeners, I want you to just dig deep and decide for yourself. That's the most important thing, is to decide for yourself, because Dr. Rosenthal, who is the author of The Gifts of Adversity, told me back in 2015 at the Virginia Festival of the Book, was that if you want to write a book, you have to have something you really, 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 really want to say. And that's because of the level of tenacity it takes, the time, and all of the energy. And so, listeners, just ask yourself, do you have something you really, 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 really want to say? And if you do, what will you call upon in order to have that tenacity, to be able to persevere, and to be able to handle the setbacks and the failures you'll face along the way? Because once you know what those things are, you can stand in your power and make the decisions that allow you to do that. Another thing that you can do that can help you get in touch with what you really want from your life is a very powerful exercise that I do at least once a year. And I actually did it with my husband a couple of weeks ago. And it was something that was suggested to me, I don't even know how many years ago, but it's something that I do. And that is to imagine that today is the end of your life. You're dying today. It's a painless death, so we don't need to worry about the death itself, but that's it. Time is up. And you have to write your obituary based on what you have done right now. So you write the obituary, and then as you're writing it, you pay attention to where the grief and the regret is. What do you regret not doing? What do you grieve in terms of the opportunity that was missed, or the thing you wish you had done more of? And once you are clear about what those things are, go do them. Another way that you can work on this exercise is to write the obituary you would love to have, right? Where you have done all of the things. And then look at what your obituary looks like right now and see the difference. If you're not doing those things, again, find a way to plan it into your day or into your week so that you are making progress, so that when you get to your actual deathbed, it doesn't matter if you finish the goal. What matters is that you showed up and you worked on it. Or that you're doing the thing that really matters to you. And so here's an example of what that might look like. So we've talked about the fact that some people say you should write a book. Well, one of the things that's required if you're going to write a book is to spend a lot of time alone writing and rewriting. And sometimes that means you're going to need to skip social events, say no to things on your calendar, spend a little less time with family in order to do that. If this is truly your vocation, your passion, you're going to be excited about that. And you're not going to feel regret when you look at your obituary if you're doing what you're meant to do. However, if you write that you had regrets that you didn't spend enough time with family and friends or relaxing or having fun, make sure that you're doing those things, because those are often the things that people actually do regret when they get to their deathbed, is not spending enough time with other people or having fun or relaxing. And so make sure you give yourself time to do that, because you can fall into the people pleasing trap with even in the writing process of like, oh my gosh, I need to get this out there quickly so that everyone can read it. That can be a form of people pleasing that causes you to lose sight of the other things in your life that are also important. So make sure that you are attending to all of the things that are really, really important so that you're living as authentically as you can, and that you're living in a way that will lead to that deep sense of overall satisfaction for your life. Okay, so we have talked about a few different ways that you can work on understanding what it is that you really want. We've also talked about the stories that we tell ourselves or that the world tells us that cause us to self-abandon, either because it will keep us safe, or we think it will help us belong, or it will help people like us more. So you want to pay attention to what are those stories and how do they conflict with your own desires or cause you to self-abandon and move away from the things that you want. And as you are working on those two things, getting clear about what you want and understanding more about the stories that keep you from that keep you in a people-pleasing space, I want you to have just radical compassion for yourself so that you can work through this in an easy way, and you can allow yourself to learn how to stand in your power over time. And so if we wrap up with an update on that original story, where I thought that just because the writing group popped up, it was my intuition leading me in the right direction, and I had to do everything they wanted in order to be in the writing group. All of these years later, I have told other people or taught other people how to have healthy writing groups where everyone's ideas are acknowledged, where everyone has a chance to say no, where people have a chance to try and see if something is the right fit for them. And I have practiced being in other writing groups, which has led to an incredible writing group that I have right now that has allowed me to write the very best writing I have ever done. I'm so in love with what I'm doing. And of course, also open to revising, because revising is necessary. But because I know what I want and I know what my vision is, I can take in other people's feedback and I can filter it through my own internal knowing. And I can say, can I use this to enact the vision I have for my book? Or is this very good feedback from someone who loves me that just isn't right for what I'm doing? And I know when to say no, and I know when to say yes, and I feel good about my decisions. And in that way, I'm living in my power. And that, my friends, is what I hope for you. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening and for participating in this conversation. If you want to take this content a little further, I want you to get out your journal and write your obituary as if you died today. As you're writing it, I want you to note where you're feeling regret. What do you regret not having done? Or who do you regret not having spent more time with? Write those down and then make a plan to do the things that you believe you will regret. You will feel so good that you have had a chance to do that. And I would love it if you would share some of your answers in the YouTube comments. It is one of the ways that you can make my day. And speaking of your insights, your thoughts, and your feedback on the podcast, I want to thank Julie Piggott, JJ Scribe, Dora Tanover, and Nancy Keeler Writes Music Arts for your comments on my recent episode with Patricia Knight-Meyer. So wonderful to hear from all of you, and I loved all of the things you had to say about my conversation with Patricia around her author platform. I also want to thank Doreen Francis for sharing your insights and for letting me know who else is talking about the same content when it comes to debunking our author platforms and the need to really protect our hearts as we do this work. Doreen, it was so great to hear from you. Thank you so much for furthering that conversation. And listeners, if you haven't reached out to the show, I would love to hear from you too. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. I couldn't do this podcast without your support. If you love this episode, here are 3 simple ways that you can keep this show thriving. 1, subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. 2, leave a 5-star review so others can find the show. 3, join my engaged dynamic community by signing up for the Writing Your Resilience newsletter. As a thank you, you'll receive a free copy of Ditch Your Inner Critic, 5 tools to transform self-doubt into self-support. Until next time, remember that your story matters. As you write and connect with the truest, most authentic version, you become not just the writer, but the person you're meant to be. And that, my friends, is the real freedom writing can offer.